Fuller.
Here.
Councilman Monty.
Here.
Councilman Vidal.
Here.
Councilman Jordan. Councilman Bartolomeo.
Here.
In compliance with the Provisions of Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 of P&L 1975, I hereby declare that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided, specifying that this meeting will be held on this date, February 17, 2015, in the Municipal Building, 55 River Road, Edgewater, New Jersey, at 7 p.m. This notice was published in the Record in the Jersey Journal, posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of the Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. Will you please join me in the salute to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. The first thing I want to do is just give a quick update on Veterans Field. The remediation and removal of the soil by NRC Construction should be completed this week. The new soil certified by First Environment has begun, and that should be scheduled, well, it's scheduled to be completed on April 1st, so things are moving forward. The Little League Complex, which includes a new artificial surface, bleachers, lighting, scoreboard, and adjoining parking lot, has been awarded to Tomco Construction, and work is due to begin tomorrow, weather permitting. The schedule for completion of this phase of Veterans Field is May 17th. Okay, the borough's engineer, CME, is actively involved in all phases of the Veterans Field project at this point. First Environment, the borough's LSRP, will remain engaged in the project moving forward until all soil and grade levels are complete. CME is currently reviewing the specifications and required permits for the balance of the Veterans Field project, with bids for final phase construction going out towards the end of May. So there we have it. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Anybody in the public wants to be heard? Jeff, state your name and address.
Jeff Matthew, 5 Beverly Place. Good evening, folks. How you doing? Good to see you. I came down once before, my wife and I, to talk to you the night of the storm that wasn't, and it wasn't a council meeting. I just wanted to very briefly tell you that after the fire, we were so proud of the way that our fire department under Tommy's directorship and our EMS and our police and our DPW and our borough officials, the way everything was handled, made us very proud. We, as most of you know, we live right, look right out over the intersection of Route 5 and River Road, so we were able to watch how our police handled the traffic there under some pretty difficult situations. And that fire could have been so much worse. The fire and all the resulting damage, not just from the fire itself, but to our town, if we hadn't had such valiant effort by these people. So we're very proud of them, and I'm sure that you've also reached out to all the other towns, that the 35 or so towns that sent people to help us, which is a wonderful thing too, to have a feeling like that. And finally, just watching the way our people in Edgewater stepped up and helped out. If anybody thinks that Edgewater is not a special place to live, I would ask them just to look at what our citizens, whether we agree on things, whether we get along every day. We're a town that when things happen, the old people, the new people, the Democrats, the Republicans, the independent coalition, we pull together and we help each other out. And I'm real proud to be a member of this community. And I thank you guys for your service. And please pass on our thanks to all of the appropriate departments.
Well said. Thank you, Jeff. Well said. Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Mary?
Mary Hogan, 606 Onset Avenue. I called Greg earlier last week to talk to him to see if he was aware of what's happening at the Binghamton, where the Binghamton road is going to be put in. I referred him to a LinkedIn. I would say LinkedIn, but that.
I do too, Mary, not alone. It's okay.
Well, Lawrence Moran, who is the general manager for Port Binghamton, let's call it Port Binghamton now. And what they intend to put there is a waterborne attraction featuring a swimming pool, an indoor restaurant, and outdoor tiki bar, and docking facilities for dinner, cruise ships, and ferries, with great views of the skyline and the George Washington Bridge. I know the DEP has done some changing as to what they consider a vessel that's floating and what's considered a permanent, structure. But the Binghamton was considered a floating boat, and we never got any taxes on it. And the only fees we got were when it burned and the fire department went in and gave them, fees charges, for not maintaining their structure. But we supply, all the services for it, police, fire, ambulance. And if they're gonna have all of this, first of all, you were talking about giving the money from a fine that we had, taking the boat out. We were talking about giving that to them after they took the boat out as a good gesture. If they're building this, I don't think they really need the 100,000, whatever it is, to give it to them. But I also think that definitely someone has to look into it. They do have an application before the DEP right now as to what it's going to be. Is it going to be a permanent structure that we can tax? Or is it going to be a boat, and are they going to have 3 boats like they had the last time and none of them be taxed? But if they're bringing in cruise ships and they're bringing in ferries and they're having a tiki bar, and I think really we have to look to somehow determine that we are going to get at least taxes on the structure. Supposedly once a year they're supposed to disconnect and float out. I don't think the Binghamton ever did that. I understand the political connections with Nelson Gross, why they never required them to do that. But this is we're in a whole different situation now. And I don't think if they're going to be charged as a boat and we don't have any control, and apparently nobody has control because the DEP and the Coast Guard are saying they don't want to do inspections. We've got to have somebody that's, looking into what's going on. I don't know if we did Board of Health inspections or not.
I haven't seen any of it, Mary, to be honest with you.
I know, but we should be seeing it because it's with
I've heard of it, but I
the
haven't
DEP.
seen anything yet.
It's with the DEP,
I'll
so
look into it.
we need someone to go down and get what they're proposing. And the other thing was the walkway, because if they're doing all that, we want them to put in a walkway that's,
Sure.
with all the regulations. Apparently, they're saying we're going to fix up what's there. Well, what's there is totally inadequate, especially if you're going to have this as a big waterfront thing where people are going to come and be waiting to sit down, and we've got to have it attractive and raised up so that it stops flooding like it does. So, someone will look into that. Now, in terms of Veterans Field, I found an old article in one of the local papers that said, when they were talking about the bonding we were doing, that it also concluded a $1,721,240.62 in funding that was already granted by the Green Acres and the Bergen County Open Space. And I wanted to know if that's included in the $13 million that we bonded for, or if that will be in addition to what we have. I'm not quite sure what the story is on that. And I know a lot of you are not involved here in terms of way back when Larry Palmer was the engineer here, but Mr. Short Palmer gave us the recommendation that every 10 years the ball field would have to be redone because the river came in and took out the dirt underneath and made it waffly, and they couldn't stop it because we did not have a bulkhead out in front of the Veterans Field. I think that you need to get in writing from your engineer that when that goes sucked out, if it is going to continue to do that, that the contaminations we're leaving there will not be sucked out. they're already down, you know, we did this whole thing about where the water is, they're gonna leave the contaminations, they're gonna cap it, they're not gonna take it out. But if that rushes into the river, as we've seen from GE on the Hudson River, as we've seen from Ford on the Ramapo, up in the Ramapos, they don't have any problem coming after who's ever putting the contaminations into the water. And I'm concerned that the borough of Edgewater, since it's our property, that we're retaining the contaminations on. If they get washed out into the river, they're gonna be able to come after us. So I think you need to get something in writing from your engineer saying, you know, I don't know if the riprap they put in or the new walkway, whatever, is gonna stop that from going out. I doubt it, because obviously there's water there. We need to have something in writing to protect the town.
Okay.
So that the town says, yeah, we left it there, but you know what, because the engineer said it's not gonna go out to the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to be heard? Here.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. I'd like to applaud Jeff and the fine words he used to thank our firefighters and police volunteers from out of town in the services of the county. That was well done during our catastrophe, and the many citizens that came out to work with the volunteers. As the soil is removed and being replaced by clean soil and certified, I'd like to know if the engineers have a map for the future. So they have to narrow down what's remaining and capped. And then also where's the contaminants being taken to. That should be a matter of record, where will those records be kept. So just it's housekeeping, but it's important housekeeping for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public here? Yes, sir.
Dennis Gallagher, 18 Almond Crest. There's a construction code that's was an issue years ago, probably about 10 years ago. And maybe that did take it, but it's come back. It's been back for a while. It's very large. We have issues and ongoing issues with contamination. We have no idea what's in that junkyard at this point. But it's about time we go back in there and figure out why it's huge and why it's littered. Yes, we have the proceedings here. Perhaps you could inform us, this has been a year, at least a year, he said we're going to have it, he's going to do it.
I think the mayor's update, you thought, I think the mayor's update.
Once we close out, I do have an update. Well, thank you. Anyone else in the public wish to be heard? Back Valley? Thank you.
Valerie Bardina, 16 Hudson Terrace. I think Mr. Gallagher was talking about the dirt piles back in 2004, 2005, 2006. I know when we was on the council at that time, but that was a big issue. Actually, I was a councilwoman, and meeting after meeting, I asked that we get, find out what was in those dirt piles, and asked Mr. Davies to remove it because it was deemed a construction yard, and construction yards are by land use ordinance supposed to have a beginning time and an end, and that didn't have an end. And here we are in 2015, and the dirt piles are back, and with all the contamination scares, I think it would really be in our due interest to find out where that dirt came from, where that material came from, how it's being removed. Back when I was on the council, they submitted a testing of the soil, but it wasn't really, I guess the person didn't, Mr. Davies didn't think I would actually read it. It was actually for soil that was in Overpeck Park, not here. So it might be of interest to find out what's in that. On Veterans Fields, we passed a resolution on Resolution 2014-275, and this was basically giving our LSRP, whatever it is, permission wherever the water table was between 4 and 5 feet, if they're below ground water surface, that they would be able to cap. So I want to know, has that area expanded? Because what happens with this variance is that basically unless we ask, we'll never know, because they don't have to come back for approval. So that is one of the questions. If you can find an answer for me, I'd appreciate it. The other
What is
thing,
the question? I was writing some notes, and
I'm sorry.
I got your question.
okay, has the initial approval for capping areas in Veterans Field, has that expanded? Because this is on a self-executing basis permission, so essentially wherever they deem it's necessary, they can without coming back to the council. So my question is, has that happened? Has it expanded from the initial assessment? My other question is on this, I just saw this resolution, and you know the website's down, so it's really hard to access any information. I'm not pointing fingers or blaming people, I'm just saying it happens. 2015-068, and it's giving St. Moritz permission to transfer their affordable housing units. Well, in February 18th, 2014, I have my notes still, I came before this council and objected to that. Basically, this was never spoken about in public. It still hasn't been discussed in public, and under the Open Public Meetings Act and the Sunshine Law, you actually are supposed to speak about things, and so the public, the taxpayers, have some knowledge about what's going on. So I see you're going to do it anyway. After that resolution was passed, this council, mayor at that time and council, received a letter from COA. It's in Greg France's possession, I assume, that COA denied permission to do that. So I don't see what has changed. I know there's a lot of little sweet things like, well, you know, they extended the deed and they're going to have 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. But this is an obligation. This is part of our statute here. And I don't understand why we keep painting ourselves into corners and allowing the same developers to constantly skirt the rules. I just don't. You know, I know you guys think that, wow, I have nothing better to do but stand up here and, and talk about Mr. Davies. Actually, I have a lot of things I'd rather do. But since, you know, every action you vote on comes out of my pocket until that day, you know, I'm going to have something to say about it. So if you can find some information or answers to that, I'd appreciate it. And I just want to second what Mr. Mathhouse said. During the fire, it's incredible. You know, everybody came out and yeah, it does make you proud that you're part of Edgewater. And I personally want to thank, just one second, you know, in November my mom had a brain aneurysm that burst, and I was freaking out. And so I called, Edgewater, the EMTs, and Mark Lewis appeared. And somehow Mark Lewis always appears. He's like my angel. And, he took control of the situation, because, we are all emotional. We don't know what to do. And I just, like, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank the Edgewater Police, the EMTs, and everybody else. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thompson?
Mayor, members of the council, Tom Chairman, 611 Henry Avenue. First of all, if you just go back to what Mayor's first topic, and that would be the Binghamton Mine. That come in to Binghamton Ferry Boat. That's a 100-year lease with the state of New Jersey. Giving, that property is owned by the state of New Jersey, 200-year lease. I think it was awarded to Nelson Gross. To whatever venture, the ferry boat come down roughly 75. At that point in time, the question of whether that was taxable property, our tax attorney, assessor at that time was Owen Sheehan, Mr. Attorney, 1971, L'Oreal versus the state of New Jersey. Okay, that determined whether or not it was taxable. And basically the ruling was, if it's substantially affixed to the upland property, the subject at hand becomes taxable. Now, you have to look on your tax charge. That may be payment of little taxes. All right, and then subsequently, you had the marketplace at Cherry Hill come in, they did the other development, then you had Sarapopolis with the tennis courts, and a good portion of that property is landfill. That's one of the reasons, and Mary is correct, with the times, there's substantial erosion if it's not properly bulkheaded all along the waterfront. And that's why, particularly in a recreation area, you see the waves during the course of time. I know you've been in the Alcove as much as I do, and even the seashells you see surfacing. So you know exactly where every nook and cranny. All right, and that's, and there's only like 3 or 4 feet in some areas. And that's all sunken barges. There was contamination there way before the Dives moved to Edgewater. I mean, they're blamed to be enjoyed to be cast. The other thing is, the second part of what Valerie brought up. Back in '06, can I ask, what's the difference between the resolution that you're considering this evening, which is a transfer of 3 units of color, than what occurred back in '06? When her own party, when I say her own party, there was a resolution, I believe it was introduced by the Secretary of the Independence, Councilman Gallagher, the second by Robio, and naturally there was an abstention by Valerie, because the property at hand was naturally family related. And what is the difference? There was always a strong opinion that there would be no off-site transfers until that point in time. And that seems to set precedent. And it's totally reversal of what you hear constantly at these meetings whenever you consider off-site color. You hear the same arguments time and time again when they themselves did the reversal. It's like, do as I say, not as I did. And I just don't know, what is the comparison, or what's the difference between the proposal that you're considering this evening than what they voted on to pass back in '06? Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Close the meeting to the public. Okay, first of all, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 12th regular session and also the January 28th, 2015 special meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a roll call?
Okay. Councilman Henry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Lloyd. Yes. Councilman Monti.
Yes.
Councilman Vidal.
Yes.
Councilman Bartolomeo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The 1516-2015, an ordinance of the Borough of Edgewater, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, fixing the salaries and compensation for certain officers, department heads, and white-collar employees, both full and part-time, beginning January 1, 2014 through December 31st, 2014. We will open that up to the public just on that ordinance only. Anybody from the public want to be heard? Valerie?
Valerie Martinez, 16 Hudson Terrace. I have questions here. Historically, traditionally, raises were given by percentages, like 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever, and this isn't. So this we have no, as a resident, we have no idea how much raise the individuals are getting.
We'll have an answer for you. It's a simple one. We can answer what we've done. Deal.
Okay, because like it says here, clerk, typist, fire, full-time 48,000, but I don't know how much the clerk, typist, full-time made. And several, some of these are newly hired. Does that mean their salary goes back? They just get hired and they get a raise?
No, we can answer it when you're done.
Okay, because I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned because, I work for civil service and I know, I don't say, I work for the state and I'm under civil service and I'll take this one. I need a raise. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mary?
I like that. Mary Hogan, 606 Underwood Avenue. Just another question on this is that civil service, we used to have, I don't know if we still do, a range for positions. In other words, the bottom level got this amount, and then you had an upper level that went to this, and then if you went over it, you made a change to do that. It might help if we could see the ranges for these positions. We know we're not talking about the individual people, but the positions, what the ranges are, like is that the top of that range? Is it the bottom of that range? Or because certainly if you have experience, I would think you're closer to the top than someone that's just been hired or, newly hired. So that might help if we could see that somewhere. Thanks.
Anyone else on this ordinance want to be heard? Closed to the public? Would you like to answer that, Fruit?
Well, you're absolutely right. Usually there's a range and then another second resolution for the specific salary. But this is a 2014 salary, so ordinance. It's not for this year, it's for last year. And apparently since the year has passed and the people actually were paid these dollars, it was simpler for them to put on the ordinance the actual salary. So I don't believe there's only a 2% increase from 13, am I correct, across the board?
That's what I understand.
That's what I've been told. So,
It was 2%. I don't know if they were paid. I think they were back paying on it, but it was 2%.
yes,
I
it's
was my understanding was 2% across the board.
2% from 13 to 14. Now we've got to work on the 15 salary, we need a
Right.
budget.
Right.
And we do comply with the state buckets in terms of positions. And the experience, when you look at the higher the bucket, the less experience, lower the bucket. And that's been consistent. So that's sort of
What's a
the
bucket?
operations.
Excuse me, what is a bucket?
I don't.
The buckets for the positions.
You mean a range?
Range.
Oh, okay.
I just made that up.
Okay.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
Do I have an introduction?
No,
Oh, we've got it.
you're going
I read
to
it.
second reading, so now you have an approval, passage.
All right.
This is you have a reading on this, right? We have public hearings, and now you have passage of the ordinance.
Right.
You introduced it once, and now you're going to pass it.
Okay. So we need a roll call.
Somebody need a motion to pass.
That's
Motion
what I
to adopt the ordinance.
There you go. I need a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
I'll second, but it's a motion to introduce it, right?
No, you introduced it already. This
This is
is
an
your
option.
Right, okay.
I second.
Okay, can I get a roll call on it?
Okay, Councilman Henry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Waller.
Yes.
Councilman Monty.
Yes.
Councilman Vidal.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we have some resolutions here.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Point of order.
In terms of addressing anything with regard to the open session, we can do that after the resolutions, or when we want to, and we sort of.
It was my understanding that we would get them for either between now and the next, so if you want to answer.
No, I just, my understanding was that if we had the answer, we would answer it.
Oh, okay, if you want to do that, sure.
No,
I recommend you go through the